Molweni, how are you today? I'm not as bad as my enemies would wish. Colleagues, good afternoon. My name is Thulani Chefuta. I am the chairperson of the National Governing Council of the APRM, the African Peer Review Mechanism in South Africa. With me, I'm joined by the Deputy Chairperson of the same National Governing Council, Ms. Magdalene Monsame, and we're also joined by the head of our Secretariat, Dr. Patrick Sokela. We will be doing this brief and also taking up on any questions that you may have. We can confirm that we'll take up your questions to your satisfaction. And so we may just get into the presentation of this brief statement. And we do so by taking this opportunity to welcome all representatives from various media houses who are here and guests in this briefing of the APRM NGC in South Africa, which is taking place during the Youth Month in our national calendar, which Youth Month this year is commemorated under the theme of promoting sustainable livelihoods and resilience of young people for a better tomorrow. We are citing this primarily because in the course of our work as well as the APRM, we were deliberate about integrating and mainstreaming the plight of young people into the course of the work that we do. And so, hence we acknowledge the context in which this briefing is taking place. We do want to remind all of us that the APRM NGC was appointed as a multi-sectoral structure in July 2020, almost 2 years now. We're in 23 months. It was appointed to pursue the commitment of the 6th administration in terms of undertaking the second generation review of the APRM in our country following the first generation review, which was marked by last activities of the 2020. Would say that all national structures of the APRM, according to the APRM statutes, have been established. We have all those national structures, which you can go through in the statement and see what those structures are. Our work is structured and designed to be in line with the thematic focus areas of the APRM, which focuses on democracy and political governance, economic governance and management, corporate governance, socio-economic development, the resilience of the state as a new thematic area, and communication. Assess the performance of countries on the area of Agenda 2063 of the AU and the sustainable development. Its establishment, the APRM NGC was able to successfully undertake and complete a self-assessment country report, which was adopted by Cabinet of the Republic of South Africa in December 2021. This then opened an opportunity for us to host a country review mission in December 2021 as well. This country review mission was led by one of the members of the panel of eminent persons, His Grace Bishop Sengulane. Furthermore, this country review mission was composed of technical experts from across all regions of the continent to come and assess the progress of the work of the APRM in South Africa. As we hosted the review mission, we facilitated that they meet with all spheres of government. They met with ministers, they met with deputy ministers, they met with DGs and various other officials in the public sector. They met with civil society organizations in all 9 provinces. We took them to all 9 provinces of South Africa. They had dedicated sessions where they met with institutions and bodies that support democracy, your Chapter 9 and 10 institutions, your IEC, and so on. They also had an opportunity of meeting with private sector, trade union federations, and other research institutes that they were interested in meeting. Basically, the purpose of the mission is to take a report that we produce as a country and say, this is our assessment of our performance on APRs that we are listing to satisfy national stakeholders, which we have listed. The mission then leads into them developing their own report, which copy of its highlights we have as part of the pack that we will share with all of you. At the conclusion of that country review mission, it then opened an opportunity for South Africa, led by its president, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, to present our country self-assessment report in the 31st Summit of Heads of States and Presidents, which was held in February this year. So our president presented our report, and upon him presenting that report, all other presidents seized the opportunity to peer review him. And that peer review process was led by the report of the review mission, which we hosted in our country in December. And out of that report, it is important to highlight that President Cyril Ramaphosa was peer reviewed at the time when he was still the chairperson of the same forum of the heads of state and government of the APRM, which is a critical milestone. In the content of the review itself, we received a two-pronged feedback. The feedback suggested that there are areas of best practice which South Africa can share with other countries, which areas other countries can learn from South Africa. Those areas of best practice include areas such as the rule of law, the independence of the judiciary, areas of corporate governance, the strength of the oversight bodies and institutions supporting democracy like the Public Protector, the Human Rights Commission, and the IEC. They also highlighted the media freedom as one of those areas, including open budget processes that are interactive in society as areas that many other nations in the African continent can learn from South Africa. It also highlighted areas of concern that South Africa needed to improve on. Leading the pack is the challenge of excessively high levels of unemployment, and even at it, high levels of youth unemployment. Inequality is very glaring as an area of concern that we must do something about as a nation. Corruption is one of those areas of concern that have been raised. Even, by the way, when our leadership of a country response to COVID-19 was commended, but still the stain of corruption was diluting that achievement. Poor service delivery and incidents of xenophobia are included in those areas that are areas of concern that will still need to be attended to as areas of improvement in South Africa. The APRM structures its work according to fact. We need to move with speed in amending the electoral acts in line with previous decisions of the Constitutional Court, for power to exchange hands from political parties and political parties only into individual citizens, including allowing those citizens to exercise the right which is enshrined in the Constitution, which is that of those who are of the right age to vote and be voted for. On the area of corporate governance, we need to do more meaningful corporate citizenship and service to communities where business entities do their business activities in the communities that they serve. In the theme of economic governance and management, areas of growth, unemployment and youth unemployment, and making sure that the large numbers of citizens have a meaningful claim in the economy by being active participants in the economy. The area of socio-economic development highlights basic service delivery and poverty as issues that must be attended to. There's a new thematic area of the APRM that focuses on the resilience of the state, which we are the first country to be assessed on. It highlights areas of the agility of the state as a whole, responsiveness and sustainability. In the course of our work, over the last 23 months of being in office of the NGC of the APRM, there are some significant achievements that we have been able to record, which amongst some we may highlight the fact that our NGC has been able to undertake and complete the second generation review in a period of 18 months, which the country could not do in 5 years from 2014. We can count amongst our achievements the fact that the President has been able to be peer-reviewed when he was still at the helm as the chair of the, for South Africa to be chair of the AU, for South Africa to be chair of the Forum of Heads of State of the APRM, but South Africa is not counted amongst those who are being peer-reviewed. And so we have been able to make sure that our President achieves that when he's still at the helm of those structures of the AU. Under the leadership of South Africa at the helm of this 2-year term of the APRM, we have seen the highest number of accessions by countries affiliating to the APRM or acceding to the instrument of the APRM. It came as a result of our country efforts in engaging other countries to open themselves up to be part of this family of nations that are under APRM. It is under the leadership of South Africa at the helm of the structures of the APRM that we have seen the highest number of reviews that have ever been undertaken under the APRM. It happened under our leadership as South Africa. And that talks to the previous experiences that we have had under the APRM, where countries accede to the instrument of the APRM but do not actually undertake the reviews that are necessary to make sure that they are indeed part of the family of nations that accede to the APRM. Now, the high levels of accessions have been matched by the high levels of the actual reviews being undertaken by the countries under APRM. The thematic focus area of the resilience of the state was only added to the instrument of the APRM in 2021. That makes South Africa the only country so far to have ever been assessed on the resilience of the state. Hence the accolades we received on our country response on corruption. And so, our leadership as a country of being the first country in the indicators that go under that thematic area, to include, amongst others, considerations of the resilience not only limited to government, but resilience of families, resilience of communities, and other sectors of society, as we have seen even during the COVID-19 pandemic. Currently, the APRM national structures are seized with the process of developing a national plan of action. In the processes of the APRM, once you have been assessed and peer-reviewed, all the areas of concern that are highlighted have to be translated into a national program of action. That national program of action must outline what are you going to do, not as government, but as a country, to respond to those challenges. And so our national program of action is under serious consideration. As per the requirements of the APRM, it has to be approved by cabinet so that it mobilizes the whole of society in its implementation. And we are sure that by next week, Wednesday, we may have another announcement to make in that regard. The essential role of this national program of action is what we define as the success of the APRM. We want to see the success of the APRM not only ending up on the documents that we produce, but through the implementation of the national program of action, so that all those areas of concern that were raised by presidents of the African continent are implemented and they begin to find expression on the daily lives of the people through improved service delivery. And that for us is what defines the success of the APRM. And furthermore, from this point onwards, our work will be designed to bring about the balance between evidence-based approaches and people-driven and centered measures. And we will be undertaking activities that will include the APRM National Conference and launch of our country report. We will be establishing provincial structures of the APRM in all 9 provinces. We will be undertaking community-based engagements and sectoral stakeholder engagements in order to promote inclusive and participatory processes that culminate into national ownership of our work as the APRM. We will also continue to keep our society engaged through dialogues, lectures, and webinars, and continuous engagements through mainstream and community-based media platforms. That is the end of our statement. Thank you very much. We will take questions. Let me just make this point that the statement is available, and in the pack we will also share the statement of cabinet that was issued when they approved our country review report. We will issue or distribute the letter from the president's desk, which was dedicated to the APRM after he presented to the 31st Forum of Heads of State, and the actual review report of the review mission on what they identified as our areas of strength and areas of concern. So all of those are readily available can be shared immediately when we finish the discussion. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the floor?
Good afternoon. It's Kyle here from SABC News. So, sir, you spoke about quite a number of areas of concern, obviously including unemployment and the issue of xenophobia. As the APRM, were you able perhaps to look at the underlying causes of xenophobia, for example, because this is like a long-standing challenge in South Africa. And for some odd reason, I don't know if government knows what to do, or does it require more a very inclusive response from the civil society alongside government But I suppose the main question is, how will South Africa overcome all these socioeconomic issues? Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no questions from the audience so far.
Okay. Let's try this one, and then we'll allow the deputy chair to take a bite as well if there are additional issues that want to be raised. It is true, Khayelitshe, that the challenge of unemployment is one of those where there was just unanimity across all experts about what is just one of those challenges that is confronting South Africa. And in our articulation, we went on to remind all of us that it is actually not a new challenge. It is a challenge that was highlighted in the diagnostic report of the National Development Plan. It highlighted two challenges. One is that we have way too poor educational outcomes than the investments that we make. But secondly, way too many South Africans are unemployed, and especially young people. Now, we are raising this in a youth month. And some of the things that, as the preliminary considerations of the APRM, we believe in is that we must begin to shift a bit from a linear solution of youth unemployment that promotes grade 1 to grade 12, grade 12 to post-school education, graduate, and then find employment. The critical question of inquiry as part of our consideration is, if that is the solution and the only solution, how then do you account for the phenomenon of unemployed graduates? And so, what may be required is the juxtaposition between young people who acquire skills and functional skills at it to be able to work in the economy and work immediately. And juxtapose that with young people who we are going to do everything possible to invest in those young people, not only for them to create their own employment, but to create employment for others as well through entrepreneurship. And so there are various considerations about addressing the challenges of unemployment. And for the first time in this quarter that we have seen growth being matched by very carefully and see what is it that has been done and done right. And some of the factors which are even included in the current instrument of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan focus on what you may consider as structural binding constraints for growth and employment. The investments we make in the economy need people who have functional skills, technical, vocational skills. So skills become a binding constraint if you don't invest in them, but they become a critical enabler if you invest in skills. And so all those factors on one side can be binding constraints, but if we invest in them, they can be critical enablers. And then focus into the sectors of the economy that hold the potential. And so that is where the solution is. And what we need now is not the interpretation of those, but investments that are followed by action to make sure that we address those socio-economic challenges. The issue of xenophobia. You are quite very right, Mr. Kumalo, that it has been an albatross around our neck. It was, in actual fact, there in the first generation review of the APRM. It was highlighted. And we did not want to just escape this issue. We included it even before it was raised by anyone else. We included it in our country self-assessment report. What we are doing about it now is that we have made a firm proposal as the APRM NGC that we must host a national conference on xenophobia as a focus, and all its different iterations, be it as emanating from those who believe they take our girlfriends and therefore are going to attack them, into those who believe that they take our businesses in our communities, we need to do something about that, and its labor market. What we are challenging ourselves as South Africa to do is, what is actually called xenophobia may actually not actually be if other countries in the African continent converge with us and advise. What would they actually do under the circumstances that we find ourselves in as South Africa, such that we are able to eliminate the rogue criminal elements that are hidden under the tag or the brand tag of xenophobia. And we're saying we must go on and have that conference so that it is not a conversation we have amongst ourselves as South Africans, but we call all others and share the experiences that we have. And that is a conversation that must not just be a diplomatic conversation. It is a conversation that must elevate the plight of the experiences of South Africans that they have and live in their communities, so that that conference is meaningful about finding solutions to the challenges that are actually branded as xenophobia. And so we actually think that through various instruments, we have identified the causes of these socio-economic challenges that we are confronted with. We have done a fair amount of proposals, even through policy instruments, of what needs to be done to address these challenges. What needs to be done now is a whole of society approach in the implementation of these interventions. Your last part of your question or comment was very correct, Khalif, that the APRM is not looking for government action in response to these issues. Whilst we are going to define things that must be done and be done by government, there are things that private sector must commit to do, and on that we will depend on the private sector for the success of those factors. There are things that civil society must raise its hand to be counted as part of the solution, for which the whole of society must depend on civil society for us to find solution to those issues, right up to community and household level, as some of these things are taking place even at the most basic unit of society, being a household and family level. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if the Deputy Chair wants to reflect. Over to you. Are you saying there are more questions? Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair, and to all media that's present. The question that is being raised is one that I think it's a question that is an unanswered one for a long time, because of the nature of economic ebbs and flows, which is not only unique to the South African environment or to the continent, but the geopolitical nature of what is transpiring even in Eastern Europe at this time. So what we are dealing is with are the consequential damages of an economic circumstance that the world is crying out for a different economic structure in respect of trade, in respect of commodity, and in respect of the labor market supply and demand. And what we can understand confidently from that is that Africa in itself has been the supply of labor and the extraction of resources, but not having enjoyed maximum economic participation of its citizens in the continent. Now, in the main, what happens is that from one generation to another, we inherit the burden and the curse of this colonial impression and the contractual liabilities that extend from having traded our resources for our people. So that is an attention point that must be raised when we deal with issues of economic governance and management as the APRM NGC in South Africa. Not only because we need to then understand what are the consequences that arise in respect of other African countries who are facing coups d'etats, etc., massive instability. This is inherited then by a youthful generation, one that is expanding not only in terms of the demographic, but also in respect of unemployment. Not due to lack of opportunity, but as the chair had indicated, the lack of skills transfer and being able to integrate entrepreneurship, not only from the point of the schooling system, but into and beyond. We had a young man, I think we spoke about it once in an NGC chair, who had created some kind of an invention that was then taken to NASA, or to the United States, to NASA, yes. And we ourselves don't give the opportunity for innovation, invention, and creation in South Africa the kind of stimulus that it needs. Now, what the President had indicated in respect of active economic participation of the citizens, in as far as extending it from the automotive industry, shows us that we need to have a multi-sectoral approach in respect of how we understand the skills supply and the skills demand that are required in order to own the economy, participate in it in a valuable and the sustainability of youth in respect of Youth Month. The focus is not just for Youth Month. Over time, so now looked at in and do those economic consequences on women as a generally bigger socio-economic overall. Economy can be aspect of rate, but also express on the and one of the recommendations that were made by African, we were supported by the ability. The rise from 2000 from 2% to about 7% in terms of migration mines and due to the fact that they will no longer be available. a hope for the continent. Be that hope, that light. How do we share the economy? Documented, are critical period of time. How is at the heart of how we need to understand. But how we relate and views of other countries. States. That instability, the economy, which is not possession in terms of what the economy understood in its context. On xenophobia. This swear word of that we ourselves the Ministry of Police in the first quarter deaths, murders. We will understand then or the women of this continent so I just want to reiterate culture, it is not a it is the nature of the inequality that issues that have been raised both
like we said, to our satisfaction.
Maybe just mainly about this national conference. How will it be structured? Are you calling for example, just pro-migrant grouping, so to speak? So are you hoping to have
in its conceptualization and by design, it is which will not only start, by the way, in the flow of the conference. Our stakeholder engagements where these things happen, make everyone who is aggrieved about something, everyone who has a solution to propose will be, like we said, our include South Africans, within South Africa, countries of the APRM. So that is the nature of the proposal. And we are going to lead it as APRM. But government will